Chapter 10. What You're Actually Trying to Build. There is a question that almost never gets asked in retirement planning conversations. Not because it's complicated, because it's too simple, and simple questions make people uncomfortable when the answer turns out to be less clear than expected. The question is, what are you trying to build? Not, how much do you need? Not, what's your withdrawal rate? Not, when can you retire? Those questions have calculators, they have formulas, they produce numbers that feel like answers. What are you trying to build is different. It requires thinking about retirement not as a financial destination but as a structure, a set of conditions that will either expand or constrain the choices available to a person for the last 30 years of their life. Most people have never thought about it this way. They have thought about retirement as a number to reach, a date to arrive at, a transition to manage. The structure underneath, the architecture that determines whether the years that follow are characterized by permission or by management, by expansion or by contraction, is something they encounter after the fact, when the decisions that shaped it have already been made. Think about the people in this book. Robert, still running his retirement calculation at 2 in the morning, is not calculating toward a number. He is trying to find a structure that feels stable enough to trust. The number has been sufficient for 3 years. What he is looking for is not larger, it is different. Margaret signed a form in 3 minutes that shaped the rest of her financial life. The form asked a narrow question: when do you want to start receiving this benefit? The decision she was actually making was larger. What income will be available to me if I outlive my husband by 20 years? Those are not the same question. Only one of them appeared on the form. Tom manages his retirement alone at a kitchen table with a spreadsheet he built himself. His father never needed a spreadsheet. The pension handled the conversion. What Tom is doing, what millions of people in his situation are doing, is attempting, individually, to replicate the function that the pension performed institutionally, turning a working lifetime into a reliable income stream. Some of them will do it well. All of them are doing it in the dark, without shared frameworks, without institutional support, without anyone to confirm that what they have built will actually do what they need it to do. Linda did everything right. Her plan was careful, reviewed, well-constructed. It was built for a probable future. The future that arrived was different, not unforeseeable in category, but specific in its timing and its cost and its duration in ways that no plan fully captures. What Linda needed was not a better plan. She needed a structure with more redundancy, more layers between the life she was living and the point at which the resources ran out. Frank and Carol go to Portugal. Ellen and Richard do not. The numbers are similar, the structures are not. What all of these situations have in common is not insufficient savings, it is insufficient optionality, the structural capacity to respond to what actually happens rather than only what was planned for. Optionality is not freedom in the abstract sense. It is not wealth as aspiration or financial independence as ideology. It is something more specific and more practical, the number of real choices still available to a person at any given moment. A person with a guaranteed income floor has more choices than a person without one, because the floor removes a category of forced decisions. They do not have to sell assets in a down market to cover expenses. They do not have to choose between spending and preserving at every decision point. The floor does not give them more money. It gives them more choices about what to do with the money they have. A person who structured accounts during the favorable tax years before retirement has more flexibility than a person who did not, because they have assets in different tax structures, accessible at different costs, flexible in ways that a single tax-deferred account is not. A person who understood the Social Security claiming decision, who modeled the survivor implications, who thought about the second phase of retirement before arriving in it, has more choices available than a person who signed the form in 3 minutes, because they preserve choices that cannot be recovered once the filing date passes. Optionality is built in advance. It cannot be purchased at the moment it is needed, and it is built not through any single decision but through the accumulation of decisions made or missed during the years when the structure of retirement is still malleable. This is why the final decade before retirement matters more than the preceding three, not because the saving is more important, because the structuring is. The decisions made between 55 and 65 about account composition, tax positioning, social security strategy, healthcare bridging are the decisions that determine how many real choices a person will have at 73 or 80, or whenever the life they plan for diverges from the life that arrives. Most people spend that decade managing a portfolio. What they are actually doing, whether they know it or not, is building, or failing to build, the structure that will determine the range of their options for the rest of their lives. The financial industry measures this decade in contribution rates and investment returns. Those things matter, but they are not the whole measure. A person can enter retirement with a well-managed portfolio and a poorly structured retirement, and the poorly structured retirement will reveal itself not in any single dramatic event, but gradually in the accumulation of constrained choices, deferred decisions, and the quiet contraction that happens when money exists but permission does not. Robert will stop running the calculation when he understands what he is calculating toward. He is not calculating toward a number. He has the number. He is calculating toward a structure, one that answers the question his wife asked him. What do we do if the market drops 40% the week after you retire? That question is not about fear. It is about choices that remain. It is asking, have we built something that can absorb a bad sequence, that does not require everything to go right, that has enough layers between us and the worst outcome that we can act from choice rather than necessity? When the answer to that question is yes, not theoretically yes, but structurally yes, built into the architecture of the accounts and the income sources and the tax positioning, something changes. Not the balance, the relationship to the balance. Margaret cannot undo the 2013 filing date. The structure she has is the structure she has. But her situation illustrates, perhaps more clearly than any other in this book, what this capacity looks like when it is gone, when a decision made at one moment has foreclosed the choices that would have been available at another. David, at 58, still has time. The structure is not yet set. The window is open. This is the thing worth holding, that for people still in that decade, the structure is still being built, and building it deliberately produces different outcomes than building it by default. The question this book has been asking in different forms across 10 chapters is not how much is enough. The answer to that question is always, it depends. It depends on what you spend, how long you live, whether your spouse lives longer, what healthcare costs, what markets do, what tax law changes, what care you need, and when. The number that is enough under one set of conditions is insufficient under another, and no one knows in advance which conditions will obtain. The more useful question, the one that most retirement planning conversations never quite reach, is, have you built something that can handle what you don't know, not everything? No structure handles everything. Linda's plan could not have handled every possible version of Paul's diagnosis. George retired in 2022 into conditions that no individual plan was designed to survive intact. But structure matters, layers matter, optionality, the quiet, practical capacity to respond to what arrives rather than only what was anticipated, matters in ways that balance sheets do not capture and quarterly statements do not reveal. The retirement that is merely adequate depends on everything going more or less as expected. The retirement that is genuinely secure, not in the marketing sense but in the lived sense, is the one that has built in enough redundancy, enough flexibility, enough floor that the person inside it can make choices rather than only respond to conditions. That is what Ellen was asking about in the car on the way home from dinner. Not Portugal specifically, the permission to go, the structural condition that makes going a choice rather than a calculation. That is what Robert is looking for in the spreadsheet at 2 in the morning, not a larger number, a different kind of certainty, the certainty that comes not from projection but from architecture. They have been asked, how much do you have? Those are not the same question.